What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host, and this is an emergency podcast. Joining me now, Ryan Wilson and John Breech to break down the firing announced after Week 5's loss to the Carolina Panthers, a not very pretty 23-16 L for the Falcons. Dan Quinn, head coach of the Falcons, and Thomas Dimitroff, longtime general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, both relieved of their duties. Dan Blank announced it, saying, decisions like this are very difficult, but the previous two seasons and start to this one have been especially hard for me because of the deep love, admiration, and respect I and my family have for Dan Thomas and their families. For many years, they have represented me, our team, organization, Atlanta, with class, commitment, and all the passion you would want of the leaders of the team. As everyone knows, this is a results business, and I owe it to our fans to put the best product we can on the field. We have poured every resource possible into winning, and will continue to do so, but the results of late do not meet our standard for what I've promised our fans. Therefore, we will install new coaching and personnel leadership of the Atlanta Falcons at the appropriate time. On a scale of 1 to 10, Wilson, how surprised are you that Adam Gase won't even be the second coach fired? He'll have to be the third coach fired if he wants to pull it off.
Yeah, I feel like Adam Gase, Doug Marrone, Matt Patricia, they've lost their cover, and now that Dan Quinn and Bill O'Brien have been relieved of their duties. So, those guys are next up. But in terms of the Falcons in particular, coming into Sunday morning, I would say if you told me that Dan Quinn was going to get fired in 14 hours, I would say, well, clearly they lost to the Panthers, because we've talked about this for a few weeks now. So they lost to the Packers last week. No big deal. They wouldn't expect them to win that game. But here's their schedule: Carolina, Minnesota, Detroit, Carolina, Denver, bye. You had to win 4 of those games.
Yep.
And if you can't beat the Panthers, a team that started 0-2 and has no defense to speak of, and you only score 16 points with that high-powered offense, look, man, Dan Quinn can be the best guy in the world, and by all accounts he is, but clearly it's not working. You're 0-5, and I sort of half joked about this on HQ on Sunday. The last time the Falcons started 0-5 was 1997. They finished 7-9 that year, and if Dan Quinn could promise 7 wins, you're like, okay, I'll sign up for that. And the next year they went to the Super Bowl, and you would sign up for that too. But this team is nowhere near close to that. The issues start on defense, and I know, okay, they're injured. There are injuries to worry about. But again, every week, every team has injuries. You can't lose the way you've lost these games. That Cowboys loss was one of the most demoralizing losses I can remember, with a bunch of guys standing around at the end of the game as the Cowboys fall an onside kick, and then to lose to the Panthers in the way they did. You hate to see it, but that's exactly, how the story was meant to unfold if you start 0-5 and lose games like the way you lost them.
Yeah, I absolutely feel like the Cowboys game was the writing. That was it. Like, as soon as they blew that lead and lost that game, I didn't think there was any way Dan Quinn was coming back. It was only a matter of time. And I know we debated, I think, the past 2 weeks about whether or not he would make it to the bye. So maybe the timing is a little bit surprising, just because I think we thought maybe Quinn would get a shot to win 4 games out of their next 5. But you know what? You know what a total slap in the face is if you're the owner, you're running the Falcons, is, hey, look, we're 0-4. We cannot lose to this team, Carolina, that just did a total rebuild. They have a new offensive coordinator, a new head coach, a new quarterback. There is no reason we should be losing to these buffoons. That's what I'm thinking if I'm the owner. So it's totally insulting to see your team that was supposed to be maybe a playoff contender come out and just get owned. I mean, this was the one game, like Wilson said, nobody thought they were beating the Packers. But I never really thought the Falcons had a chance to win this game. And the Panthers dominated this almost from start to finish. And we're talking about a Panthers defense, like Ryan said, that just hasn't been that good. They've been, they gave up 34 points to the Raiders in week 1. And all of a sudden the Falcons can't even put up 20 points on this defense. So, you had to do something. And as we saw in Houston, sometimes a fired coach can spark you to a win the next week.
Yeah, if you're playing the Jaguars. We'll get to all those games. Of course, you can check out the recap, Week 5 recap podcast in the feed. I'll say this about this game. I mean, I watched the whole thing because it's on here locally. This Falcons team could not have looked less inspired. And Matt Ryan, who, we all agree is a very good quarterback. I mean,
it looked like another interception.
I mean, he has been – so he's completing 64.7% of his passes coming into this game, 7 touchdowns, 2 picks in 4 games. And then against Carolina, He goes 21 of 37 for 226 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception for a 63.6 passer rating. I don't think he's broken or anything, but he just hasn't been very good this year. And the game against Green Bay on last Monday night, and then today, it was just a team that looked like it was stuck in the mud and sort of knew that the end was coming. And I think that Arthur Blank was down there. They kept cutting to him during the game. His Dimitroff was down there on the sideline. Dan Quinn's like running around clapping like after a terrible pick by Matt Ryan in the end zone. And then, Blank's down there with his family, and you could just see like the tension bubbling over. And again, I'm with you, Ryan. I think Dan Quinn's a great dude. He's a nice man. I think he's a good coach. He was just depressingly close to winning a Super Bowl with the Atlanta Falcons.
That's the thing. That's what he will be remembered for, 28-3. They were that close to changing the course of that organization's history.
I really do think that loss, it's lingered. I think
they went 11-5 that year. They won 10 games the next year. Then it was 7-7 in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah.
And that 7-9 last season, there was conversations about, okay, is Dan Quinn going to survive? He did. And the last thing you can do is start 0-5. And, so here we are.
Yeah. You can't start 0-5.
Especially and then to compound the Super Bowl fact, when they did get back to the playoffs next year, they should have beaten Philadelphia. Remember, they got down to the 2-yard line late in the fourth quarter. They score a touchdown. They win the game. They couldn't punch it in. So now the season before, 2016, you blow a 28-3 lead, but then you get back to the playoffs. So you're like, you know what? We did this. We got over that loss. We can get back to the Super Bowl. And then your first game is in the divisional round because you won your division. You got to bye, and you lose because you can't punch it in from the 2-yard line.
The neck folds.
Yeah, and that's just as demoralizing. So it is really amazing what happened here and how quickly it happened. Because after that, this team just started spiraling downward and blowing double-digit leads left and right.
I think this team, so they're 0-5. They should probably be 3-2. They should have taken care of business today against the Panthers. They had a 98 or higher win expectancy. 98% win expectancy against the Cowboys and the Bears. They should have won both of those games.
The lesson, the takeaway for me is?
What's that?
You can't have 11 first-round picks as possible starters on offense in football games.
I will say this. I think that whatever's been happening, Dirk Cutter has always been top 5 in terms of pass attempts in the NFL every year that he's been a play caller or head coach and calling the plays. And they are one of the most run-heavy teams early on this year with Todd Gurley. I really feel like they've been trying to and wrongfully lean into the idea we got to make Gurley the centerpiece of our offense, and it just hasn't worked out. Calvin Ridley ended up with 8 catches, 136 yards, and was good, but it was all garbage time. Ryan's stats were, he had 82 passing yards at halftime. If you're Arthur Blank and you're watching that, you're like, because you can tell. Look, they haven't. They have according to Tom Pelissero, reported that they are still finalizing the plan for interim head coach, which means this was not something Arthur Blank woke up this morning expecting to do. I think he really was going to wait till week 10, and then he saw that game. He's like, I can't let this keep going, and that it'll pervade the organization. Dimitroff, a whiz kid. We haven't really talked about him. He's been there for a long time, or was there for a long time. He, was sort of a whiz kid, came up under Bill Belichick. Widely regarded around the league for, embracing analytics, earlier than other people. Total hipster dude, but has been there since 2008. Orchestrated the Julio Jones trade when they made that.
His first draft pick was Matt Ryan.
Yeah, first draft pick was Matt Ryan. Traded up to get Julio. Came in with Mike Smith as part of the replacement for Bobby Petrino. And they've been a winning head coach since, a winning football organization, since he got there as general manager. But he's been through 2 coaches now, and it felt. I don't blame Arthur Blank for making a wholesale change here.
Yeah, it is interesting, as you point out, that we all knew this was coming, and still there's no interim head coach. Pete Prisco talked about this on Sunday, that they have Dirk Cutter there, they have Raheem Morris there. I don't know which direction they'll go in, so they have options. But again, these are going to be interim guys, and now Eric Bieniemy will be a talking point. Is Joe Brady going to be a talking point as a possible guy 1 year in? And look, that 3 games into the last 3 games for the Carolina Panthers, the sense you get from the outside looking in, and you would know better, Brinson, you're watching him closer, these dudes are buying into Matt Rule, and Teddy Bridgewater and Joe Brady seem to be getting along pretty well.
The Panthers might make the playoffs. We were dead ass wrong about the Panthers.
They're in first place. Like,
I know.
it's definitely a possibility. And one thing on Dan Quinn, since being hired in 2015, the Falcons have blown 5 fourth-quarter leads of 14 points or more. That is the most in the NFL in that span. And the other thing I'll say real quick is, like, how do you think Matt Patricia and Adam Gase feel right now? I mean, they have to be wondering how in the hell they have a job, because Bill O'Brien, 4 playoff appearances in the past 6 years, gets fired. Dan Quinn's been to a Super Bowl. He got fired. And somehow Matt Patricia still has a job when who was better earlier than 2 years ago with the Lions, Ryan?
One Mr. James Caldwell, 9 and 7 in back-to-back years, got fired.
Former
Adam
Forest legend.
And the Jets are the worst team in the NFL, and they don't look like they're going to be getting better anytime soon. So we better should we just record 2 emergency podcasts right now to get the Patricia and Gase out of the way?
Yeah, I will say this. Brinson mentioned and I mentioned it. Dan Quinn, by all accounts, is a great guy. We saw the letter that Arthur Blank released talking about him and Dimitroff. When Bill O'Brien was fired, we heard a lot of this guy was effing and jeffing people on their way out the door when he got rid of them. JJ Watt, and he had a heated altercation reportedly, and there was no love lost when he got let go by, the players and those who seem to be close to him. So that is one difference. But at the end of the day, those guys are both out of their jobs, and you don't want to see people get fired.
Yeah, I mean, I think 0-4 at 0-4, it was going to be tough for Dan Quinn to come back from this. He's going to need, like we said, to win 4 or 5 to make it to the bye. And then 0-5, you're not making the playoffs, right? I mean, like, we agree that at 0-5.
Like I said, if they ended up 7-9, that's a Super Bowl basically.
Right. I mean, that means you went 7 well, it's not that great, but I mean, like, the point being is they weren't making the playoffs. And if you're Arthur Blank, you do this now. You don't want to let, you want to give yourself some room to search. You don't want to make the change midseason, but no one is going to blame you for this. And so let's talk. You mentioned possible candidates. Joe Brady. I think that's too young. He's 30.
Yeah, that's right. And look, if we've learned anything from Dan Quinn and even Bill O'Brien, there's a huge, not Bill O'Brien because he's actually won it, but maybe Matt Patricia, there's a huge difference between being a coordinator and being a head coach. They're different job responsibilities. There's one thing to be in charge of making a game plan each week, and there's something else to be a micromanager of everyone, and sometimes it's hard to do.
Yeah. Which job do you think is better, the Texans or the Falcons? Breech?
The Texans have Deshaun Watson. So
yeah,
I would say, like, off the cuff, I would say the Texans, but let's say the Falcons go 1-15. All of a sudden they have the first overall pick in the 2021 draft.
No. And one win will not get you the first overall pick.
All right. Let's say they're tied with the Jets at 0-16 and they get the number 1 pick in the draft. And, you're not finalizing that coaching hire till the end of the year. So I think if the Falcons had a top 3 pick, maybe they shoot above. If you have a chance at Trevor Lawrence, I think the Falcons are the better job. But otherwise, I think it's the Texans.
Could Dabo Swinney go to Atlanta?
Why would he leave? He's making $9 million a year, and he gets the best players.
Could Nick Saban go?
No, he's 67.
Josh McDaniels.
Yes, that's now we're talking.
Daniels makes a lot of sense for this.
We say that about every job for Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Eric Bieniemy makes a ton of sense. I think if I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'm more likely to go to Atlanta than I am to Houston.
Why?
Because the power structure.
By the way, know what it is.
What's that?
It's Rich McKay right now, but we don't know what the rest of it is.
Right, but I'm saying, like, it just feels Houston, no first round pick. You do have to.
No, I think there's some questions about no GM. They went from a GM head coach to no GM to an EVP overseeing everything. That seems sort of weird right now.
Yeah, I mean, and look, the bottom line is Dan Quinn's a defensive guy, and his defenses stink. They've been awful. And, you're getting outplayed. Matt Ryan's getting outplayed by Teddy Bridgewater. Like, there's a lot of questions to be asked. It stands to reason that either Raheem Morris or Dirk Cutter, by the way, both of those guys should be on the list of candidates. I don't like hiring an interim for the full-time head coaching job, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're both mentioned. And whoever takes over as the interim, if he goes like 8,
good Lord, are you crazy?
They got 11 games left. He goes 8-3, 7-4. He's probably getting hired.
Yeah, that's a large ask.
Well, I'm just saying.
I mean, they could win their next 4 games. That's not too crazy.
You are the most optimistic person on planet Earth. You know good and friggin' well they're not winning
Wilson. It's the Vikings, the Lions, the Panthers, the Broncos. They're all
It is
winnable.
crazy. We've had this conversation. They just got the doors blown off by a Panthers
because
team.
they checked out on their coach. They mentally checked out. They weren't even going through the motions. They weren't even doing that for him. They were just out there because people were watching it on TV. I feel like the Falcons would stay in the locker room if Dan. It was. They're going to win.
They're going to win this. They're going to win this next week, and then we'll see if they can rip off a couple more. But look, if Raheem Morris takes over and they win 6, 7, 8 games the rest of the way, he's probably going to get a look.
If they go 11-0 under Raheem Morris, he will definitely get the job. I agree. But let's calm down with them going to win 8 games. You guys are crazy.
All right, Devo, clip and save it so we can dunk on Wilson later when they go 7-4 down the stretch. That's the Dan Quinn Emergency Podcast. Make sure and check out the full Week 5 NFL recap show in the feed as well. And we'll have Monday Night Football previews and much more headed your way first thing tomorrow.